Alrighty, folks. Welcome to installation number 3 of the Catalyst Lunchtime Rant. I am Mariah McCamey, your insight instigator and talk show host wannabe. I am joined by Robin Ameliani, Chief Marketing Bullshit Slayer and co-founder. I'm also joined by Trevor Keating, our residential polymath and director of all things digital media. And today we are going to bravely go where some of us have never gone before, and that is to talk about TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, all sorts of social media channels that B2B marketers might not always think about. So, of course, we know LinkedIn is an integral part of our marketing and sales strategy, but what is all of this talk, this buzz that we've been hearing about when it comes to channels like TikTok? So I have asked Trevor and Robin and myself to do a little bit of digging. Some of us were probably a little bit more familiar with TikTok and Snapchat than others of us. Some fun facts for the room before we open it up to discussion. There, I think, we're edging close to 2 billion installs worldwide of TikTok. And they just hired the ex-CEO of Disney to be their new CEO. So TikTok is poised to be the next big marketing thing, and potentially not just for teenagers, although we know those early adopters, those 13 to 24-year-olds, often start the trend that then our parents join later on. There are some offerings now that TikTok is providing for brands. You're able to create your own channel, upload relevant videos. You also can work with influencers to spread content to a broader market. And then you can also now pay to advertise on TikTok. Robin, Trevor, did you guys have a chance have you downloaded TikTok? Have you tried it out yet?
No, I'm resisting. I've decided this is the one social app I am going to fight to download just because I have too many at this point. It's too consuming. Yesterday, I got a notification about how much time I've been spending on my phone, and it was embarrassing. And I'm like, I've got to cut back. So I'm on a social media diet. So not yet is the answer.
Anybody else? Is anyone else brave enough to download it? I did not.
I have it. I don't use it because I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things when you first download like Instagram or Facebook and you don't post anything, you don't do anything. Now you're just looking at other people's
observing.
Feel a little creepy and so I have it, but haven't done a ton on it. What about you, Jem?
Well, Robin, I
know the answer.
Well, I know. So I'm going to give you a very long answer because you guys already know the short answer. But Robin, don't you feel like we should be able to disable the weekly report from our phones that tell us how much up we are week over week on usage? But so no, I have not downloaded the TikTok app, but so there is a game that I play on my phone that I love so much. And it's called Words with Friends.
Game? You play a game on your phone?
I do. And it's like Scrabble, right? It's called Words with Friends 2, not 1. I don't know where the 1 went. But anyway, so I play with like my mother-in-law and my friends, and I love this game so much. So much so that when we went camping this weekend, there was no service. It said literally no service on my phone, and I panicked, right? Panic. And at night, as I'm completely sober, of course, when you're camping, you're sober all the time. No, you're not. But anyway, I was like, how am I going to play this game on my phone with no service? So I played in practice mode with the phone and not with anybody because I love this game so much. But anyway, I have the free version, and in between, like, it shows you ads. And there was a TikTok ad, and it was a video of someone creating a cake on TikTok. And it was like a rainbow cake, and it did not make me want to create the cake, but I did sit up and pay attention thinking, this TikTok thing, it's a thing.
You're intrigued.
That's one that I've heard is becoming popular, is actually like cooking informative things, like how-tos, which I don't know how you do it because I think what's the longest one you can have? 30 or 60 seconds now, but before it was like 15. And yeah, they're so quick. It's like a teaser that just kind of gets you to want more information, which could be an interesting thing for advertisers. But right now, I think what's hard is the demographic that's on the site currently. If it does expand or does get a little bit more widespread.
cheershealth.com.
That's a really good point. Yeah, we're seeing comedians. Jimmy Fallon's had a lot of success on the channel doing challenges, which is supposedly, I wouldn't know personally, an integral part of the engagement community is to post a challenge and ask everyone to respond in kind with a video. So knowing what we know, which isn't too much, from a B2B perspective or a B2C perspective, any brands that you think should be playing in this space?
Yes, I had so many ideas after I read your brief, Mariah. Like, you think about all these developers, let's say on GitHub or something, that go in and they do a challenge around creating software, creating apps or whatever, and there's a race, you know. And I mean, I just feel like TikTok could help facilitate some of those things. It feels like there's so much around software development actually that could happen on TikTok, or TikTok could be like the promotional channel, you know, to get people engaged.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, companies like our clients, Adobe and Microsoft, I just think this is a huge opportunity for brands like them, especially Adobe, you know, given how creative they are. And because they do have, you know, B2C solutions as well, I think the opportunity for them is good. And like we've talked about in the past, I mean, now is the time to be creative. We have got to figure out how to, you know, continue to push these brands out there. And now is the time to flex that creative muscle and taking risks, calculated risks like this, to see if something like this actually works for big B2B brands.
I've never done that. Or I've
Yeah.
never heard that.
I like the idea too. It's not. I mean, you have to commit to the platform. But you'll see a lot of TikTok videos on YouTube. You'll see them on Instagram. You'll see them on Facebook, and it's like clearly people can repurpose that content. So it's not like okay, now I have to have a TikTok strategy. It's almost like that can be your driving platform for creating the initial video, but maybe not where it lives forever. It also seems like a much more like personalized platform. Like how do you, who's speaking to it? It's almost like handheld almost every single time. It's not like this big production studio. So it has a little bit more authenticity to it that could be interesting if you do have that like ideal spokesperson at your company that can just really sell something and do something really, really well. Just hand the keys over to them and let them do that for a while and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think having clear expectations of this type of advertising, like this is definitely like top of funnel type promotion. You're not going to convert people with your TikTok ad, but knowing that you really are pushing out your brand and generating that brand awareness that everybody needs right now.
And giving them that peek behind the curtain that they would normally never see, like, especially in the B2B space. Like you don't see those people that you actually want to meet, and you're like, who runs this company? I know what Adobe is, but like, what does that mean? Is there a way to get that peak? Because I mean, and we talked about it earlier today, but that authenticity, especially right now, like everybody wants to hear what your brand stands for, and like cause marketing, and that's an approach that probably could bring some of that to life in a very authentic way.
Direct mail, just pulling you right.
Well, and I feel like with Adobe too, Robin, now that you mention it, Mariah, don't they have like a creativity awards sort of platform?
Now you guys.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I could see such a great tie-in just to, in terms of the audience, right? Knowing that folks on this channel are generally skewing towards the creative, and therefore need tools to support their creativity also. It seems like a very natural fit.
Yes, that's one of the banner ads. Like it goes through.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Well, very cool, guys. Well, on the subject of these things, Snapchat, of course, has been around for quite a long time.
Yeah.
like that one
Folks are still
might- I
saying
don't know,
that
I'm curious if they
potentially
even change the
it's,
ad
you know,
depending on
of course they've had
what
a
your
lot of
focus
young
is, 'cause, like,
earlier
things like
adopters,
anxiety
but
might
old
trigger more
folks
for
or
more,
middle-aged
like,
folks such as
business-oriented
some of us.
people. So,
I mean, not
sorry,
me.
it just sounds a little weird.
Also joining this channel, I'll be
have-
honest, I joined
so the ad
Snapchat
comes through
6
on
years ago.
Insta.
I haven't used it probably in
it
4
just
years
flashes through
myself
each of those
as a
pages.
platform,
Anxiety,
other than maybe to creep on
Sunday
some of my
scaries. There's a bunch of
teenage
them. I wish I could
cousins
find it
and
right now,
nephews and
just so we can
nieces.
see it.
I want to know what's
Would
in
you
that.
rather recommend Snapchat or
I feel like
TikTok
I
to a
should've
client
sent those
if you
out
had
of
to
my
choose?
ABG
Would you rather?
stuff for Adobe. I have
I
a
sent them little
definitive
care
answer to
packages
this.
at the Tumblr.
I would definitely
So I
say
survived
Snapchat.
ADGS, and then I put,
And
like, a
here's the
shelf
reason
at, like,
why.
Bailey's or whatever,
In
their
order for me to
preferred program. I should've
communicate
sent
with
them these
my
pills.
teenage boys who are ages 15 and
Complete-
16,
Well,
I had to be on Snapchat. They communicate no other way
My
than on
phone is right
Snapchat.
next to
They
me,
don't text.
listening.
They're not on Facebook. They don't call you.
But the other thing too,
You have to Snapchat them. I mean, it's the way parents my age are communicating with their teenage kids. So I know that, you know, even thinking about like demographics of B2B and knowing that there's a lot of, you know, middle-aged folks within the B2B realm that they're also on Snapchat because they have to be in order to communicate with their children. So I feel like of the two platforms, TikTok versus Snapchat, Snapchat is definitely far more adopted. And one of the things I've noticed with myself during this pandemic is I am now watching the damn Snapchat ads. Like I'm more tolerant of them, which I never thought I would be, because before I was so annoyed, and now some of the content is so good that I'm like, well, I might sit and watch through this one, and they're awful, and they're, you know, they occur frequently, but I'm learning I'm more apt to actually watch those than I ever have been before. And I don't know if it's because, you know, my usage is up 10,000% during this pandemic, since there's a lot of time at home. But I feel strongly that Snapchat would be the place to go versus TikTok.
That's interesting. I actually would say the opposite. I would say that I would go with TikTok solely because I think Snapchat has tried and seemingly failed a little bit on the advertising front. From a cost perspective, it's insanely expensive and not worth the bang for the buck. So as an advertiser, it's really difficult to justify actually getting, especially for a B2B advertiser, to want to go into that space. I couldn't imagine forking up the bill for that, where TikTok has a network, I guess. So it's not this one-to-one relationship that you have to create. You don't have to know every single person. Or Snapchat, it's I now need to go out and reach out to every single person that's on my audience if I want to do this for free. Or you have to pay a really big premium to actually reach the audience. So as far as, I definitely hear you on the, some of their stuff is really engaging, especially like, I mean, there's brands that do it really well, even like New York Times, Daily News, they have like really intriguing. But for the average person, I think that's where or the average company rather, I think that's where it struggles a lot. It's so one-to-one that it almost, it inhibits that scale, and then you end up paying just to do it rather than kind of experimenting with something like TikTok, where you could probably do it for free for a while.
I was, it's so funny. I was leaning very much in your camp, Trevor. It feels like the barrier of entry for TikTok is so low that that's kind of like well, why not do it and actually get credit for being an early adopter? Because at some point they are going to adopt what Snapchat, like Facebook, like all those companies have done, because there's kind of a revenue model that's been established for that space. And so, and it feels like you can do TikTok kind of for free. And of course, time isn't free, right? So there's still some resources, whether it's internal or external, that you need to dedicate to it, to play there. But the monetary
I do like that
investment just feels so much lower, and also that you have a little bit more free reign to be bare bones, because there's, you know, the authenticity play that you can lean in on versus having something that, you know, looks, I think, just more polished, and so it feels like, why not do TikTok? I don't know. And plus, who doesn't want to learn how to dance better?
We all
But I think like Justin Bieber Haley and what
Yeah,
they're
I'm
doing, and
surprised.
I'm like,
Most
oh my
people
gosh,
don't
this
know
is so
that.
cool. And I'm part of the old
No.
middle-aged
They
grouping,
definitely
right? So
tout it, but yeah, unless
So
you're
I don't know.
have I
interested
ever told
in
you that
sort of
Jem
thing, it's
thinks
probably
she's a
something
really good
people overlook.
dancer?
But yeah,
I
they
am, you
say,
guys. I am. I wanted to
like,
audition for the
Like
role.
Elaine.
I might have a
Great
really
song.
great video of Jem
Blackmail video.
in her element at Aphilia's dancing. She might have even had like the white man's overbite where she was
Oh yeah,
but
all
it
of
sounds legitimate. Like, okay,
all
this
of it.
the Filipino girl. Yeah.
Don't make me challenge all of you to create a TikTok dance video.
I was
Because
gonna
I've
say, there's something
Right?
outside
Well,
of our
so,
marketing.
I actually, what I was thinking about for TikTok too, Mariah, when you pose a question of how is it usable for our clients, the first thought that came to mind, which of course just immediately left my mind until now, is that it could be a really great internal communication channel
Now that I'm the new
and
spokesperson.
a morale booster.
Before
So
I've ever even tried
we were on a call
I think you should just send them the
with a
recording
client
of us,
last
like,
week,
talking
and
about it. Be like,
they were
"Here you go,
talking
you're
about
welcome. Just put this on the
how they're
internet
trying to,
and
they're
Right?
working really hard to keep their dispersed team
put it on there and say,
just more
brand it,
engaged
like,
in
put
this
Catalyst
time
and
where
just,
people
like,
aren't going
brand
into the
it,
office
then be
and
like, we could
won't
do
be
this
going
and
into the
more
office
for
for
you,
some
like,
time.
as a sales
And this feels like a really great
Yes,
channel to
perfect.
create that camaraderie
You know how to improve your
and fun,
marketing.
right?
Yeah, we'll
Because
be there
people aren't
doing
having
This
kind of that
far,
water
we'll
cooler
take it even further.
sort of moments
guys, this
anymore.
is so like that idea of like rehumanizing, right? As we sort of
hearing.
lose
Like,
that personal
spin off into
face-to-face
blog
time,
posts, we
keeping
can turn
that
them into pages.
seems really important
No.
right now. The concept of
Do
authenticity
you want to
for
stop
brands
recording
that
this one and
can
move to the
sort of
next?
afford to be a little experimental, right? We
not wait for
often
Jem?
recommend that like
Yeah,
spend
let's keep
10% of your efforts on something that's a little bit more cutting edge, bleeding edge. For both Snapchat and TikTok, right, there are opportunities other than just starting your own channel. So there's always opportunities to partner with influencers, partner with other big publishers. You guys just mentioned New York Times. That's a way to cut costs as well, and also not worry so much about creating your own audience if that's a concern, which always is. Other nice things about Snapchat and TikTok is that unlike some of our other now old veteran channels like Facebook, they have not throttled their engagement rate as much, right? So they still have a very engaged user base. Now, of course, the balance there is always, as they move to monetize, how can they ensure that they keep that engagement high without losing viewers and also alienating brands at the same time. Speaking of Facebook and Instagram, Facebook has, of course, released their quarterly earnings not so soon ago, a while ago. And they are, of course, feeling the pain of not having small, medium businesses advertise so much on their site. So they are quickly pivoting, as are others, including BuzzFeed, into finding new ways to be of service to this audience. Of course, it's a win-win. So Facebook recently launched something, not Marketplace, not that sort of garage sale thing that is going on right now, but Facebook and Instagram storefronts. It is touted as a way to make it easy for businesses to set up an online store for customers through Facebook and Instagram. What's interesting about this move, right, is that you're taking an ecosystem that's been very focused on discovery and awareness for brands, right? It's a place for people to explore, and now you're making it just one step closer, easier for them to purchase. You're hopefully providing tools to small and medium businesses that will help them sell more and therefore spend more money on your platform. So all around, relatively genius move on their part. My question for you guys is, would you shop on Facebook or Instagram market storefronts?
I think so. I think I inherently already do in the little marketplace they've created of like the reselling of like the eBay thing. I also think it's a huge move for them. I mean, it's an obvious investment. Like Amazon kind of showed a really great proof of concept. Google has now reestablished and reinvested in their own e-commerce marketplace and made it a lot easier. They actually made it free to be able to publish your own kind of merchant center. There's some technical limitations because it's very difficult to do that, but it's getting better. But I think for SMBs and those kind of smaller storefronts, as they start to compete with these big box retailers and we move away from kind of, you have to go to a retailer, you can go direct to consumer in an e-commerce environment and make it seamless, simple. You don't have to have an e-commerce website anymore. You could utilize something like Facebook in order to get started. I think that's huge. I think that's a great opportunity for them, because even with Google's system, you have to have a website that supports it or some kind of merchant center that supports it. With Amazon, you have to have, it's pay to play, or you're at least forfeiting a lot of your profit by sending it back to Amazon. So I think Facebook's kind of coming in at that level. That's the barrier to entry is very small. They already have the network. So now that you've created kind of a new ecosystem for smaller companies, it may not be this most beautiful thing you've ever seen, but at least it gets you kind of off the ground.
Yeah, I love this idea. And I think both from the seller's perspective as well as the buyer. I mean, of course, we just continuously try to make things easier, smoother for the buyer to actually buy and buy as quickly as possible. So I think this just helps enable that. Yeah, and to your point, Trevor, like from the seller's perspective, like at least you're not giving the cut to Amazon. And it's, I think people are more forgiving now for this more authentic appearance. So it doesn't have to be this uber polished looking site, which is the expectation when you go to somebody's website now. So I think it lends itself, again, back to the whole notion of the barrier to entry is a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
What about the trust piece? Like, are people going to trust Facebook with their payment, their credit card information, if they feel like if they can't even trust them with their like personal name and preferences and photos and
people like you, Jem? Yes. For the rest of us who shop online on a daily basis, hell no. I feel like and we're marketers. Like, I hate to tell you people, but like your data is sold, whether you like it or not. Like your digital footprint is every step you take is mapped. So just accept it and embrace it and move on, and just know that, you know what, your buying life has become a hell of a lot easier because you're being tracked.
Yeah. I think that's a huge one, is like everyone blames the front end system, but the spoiler alert is Visa sells your data every single day. So your transactions on your credit cards are sold back to all these systems in this giant syndication of networks that you can't avoid it anyways. Everybody already knows whether you're in the market or purchasing or whatever you have possibly done. They know.
It's like, how can you secretly buy things these days, right? Like it's not even a thing anymore.
There's like these like old paper things. I think that it's a cash or something, but pretty much.
Yeah. When was the last time you saw one of those?
I haven't seen one in years.
Well, it's such an interesting, wow. Like, I mean, it just opens up so many things. I think what's so fascinating about America is that we are giving this information to private companies, right? Like, this is the power that we are now giving to Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, the big four, right? Like, versus in other countries where maybe that information is being, they're forced to give some of that behavioral information over to their government. So that's, of course, an interesting place to play. So here's so I have two zinger questions for you guys.
Oh,
we can edit some out if we need to.
At this point, screw it.
All right. So very good conversation around new social channels, old social channels, how they may be relevant to our marketing world. So you guys just get to pick one or two of these two. Social media marketing, necessary evil, or a place to create an authentic connection?
Ooh, necessary evil.
Necessary evil.
I don't know. I mean, so that the discussion we just had about this Cheers Health, prior to that, the first thing, so Jem, just to fill you in real quick, I had been served up an ad on Facebook for this product that helps with hangovers. And what I thought was super interesting was the first step in my process was I just went through and read all the comments and how the company responded to people's comments and questions. And so I really and truly developed a connection with them. I'm like, okay, I'm a believer. How do I get to the website? Like, it was, and I spent some time going through each one, and I was like, wow, that person has the same symptom that I have, because it's all about anxiety, or what's the other one called, Trevor?
Sunday scaries.
Sunday scaries where if after a night of drinking, like I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like panicked and I have these irrational fears that I can't quell. But anyway, it was the first thing that I did was go through and read all these things where I'm, looking at people that are actually potential patrons, actual customers, plus the company's response to each of these people and how they engage. So immediately was like, okay, not only are they responsive, but they're genuine. And I could tell that there was definitely authenticity in how they responded. It wasn't like just bullshit marketing that they were just trying to schmooze people. They were actively trying to have engaging conversations with these people that I was privy to.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I think it depends on how you treat it. I think you could create it as a necessary evil because it's a cheap advertising platform. Like you don't have to go buy a Super Bowl ad to get exposure. That's amazing. But I do think that if you do it well and you have an organic footprint and you have somebody that's willing to engage, I think we all know Wendy's. Like, I think that's a case in point of what does Wendy's stand for. They're hilarious. Like they do such an amazing job of interacting with their customers and bashing down their competitors. And it's what we all want to do and wish we had the brand freedom to do it, but they've kind of taken that leap and they've done it well and very authentic and it works. I think that they now look at that as like a pivotal part of their brand rather than a necessary evil by any means.
So another one too, I don't know if you guys follow, they follow like a lot of these comedic type influencers on Instagram. The company's Slim Jim. So what they do is they have little comments and I'm like, whoever is this person is brilliant. I love the Slim Jim Instagram person. And they're not promoting anything that they have. They're just following up and they have these little, these witty comments, witty remarks.
It's just the comments. It's the best thing ever. I know exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There's this idea of like, okay, first let's start with who your target customer is. Is this the place that they're going to be? And then also like what is of interest to them, which may be outside of your product offering. But this concept of like, if you do it right, you can gain this brand equity, right? So still upper funnel channel. If you do it right, back when I started my career, what was so interesting, right, is that these big brands like Mattel, Microsoft, everybody, they were handing over the keys to the castle to 21-year-olds, 25-year-olds, right? and the companies that did succeed, Trevor and Robin, to your point, were the ones that said, okay, we trust you guys. You're going to create a relationship with our consumers and customers on this channel, and it's going to be really authentic, and you're going to build brand loyalty that way for us.
SportsCenter kind of took that mold actually recently during the pandemic, and they gave the keys over to I forget his name, but LeBron James always talks back and forth with him because he thinks it's so funny. He's there, and you can kind of tell he's like, hey, why is so and so not worried? Like he'll call him out, or call out SportsCenter, and like they all know who he is. It's like this like brand that he is just the funny one that does kind of the like extra like things that wouldn't normally exist on SportsCenter. And I know, Robin, you brought that up once. It's like they've kind of done a good job of changing the content, but still kind of keeping it SportsCenter in nature, but like bringing in like more personal home videos and stuff like that. And it's amazing. Like it's what people really want right now.
So my takeaway is like, let's hire a really funny person, Robin. Clearly, we're not enough.
We're not in it.
So we think we are. But, and then secondly, Mariah, when you're saying, that's such a great upper funnel tactic. When I think about Robin's example that she just gave, she went from upper funnel to bottom funnel, like the acceleration, right, to purchase is that's so compelling that how can you ignore it? But I want to learn more about these Sunday scaries offline. I'm like, wait, what is this thing? Because I thought it was TGIM. Mariah.
This is all about being so hungover. Like, when you're hungover and you are anxious, like, or you can't sleep because you had too much to drink.
Is that when you pray and say things like, I'll never drink again, please make it go away?
Yeah. When you might be throwing up in the car with your kids in the back, Jem?
Maybe, yeah. I've heard of these stories.
Yeah, we all have friends that have, not even friends, people that we've seen on the internet that do these things. But even just like maybe you've just had 2 drinks, maybe 3, and you have an anxiety, like you go to sleep happy and you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're like, I don't feel so great. But it's only Sunday scaries because it's close to, like, you were probably drinking on Saturday.
Usually happens Saturday night.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's not Sunday night to Monday. It's nothing to do with that cycle.
No,
Got it.
That's like the day of the week. Just that you're
Okay.
more likely to drink on a Saturday night probably than any other night during the week.
And
And
you're
it's
like,
got to do it on a Wednesday night?
yeah. You're like, oh gosh, work's tomorrow. I have so much to do. And you start kind of freaking out. But
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I think back to what we were talking about. I think on the B2B front, I think it gets really interesting if you do want to have kind of a brand on social, and like if you were going to take a Slim Jim route or a Wendy's route, like what does that actually mean? Most B2B brands are like, it's just not worth it. But I don't know. In my mind, and this might be just my own opinion, I like the idea of like everyone has heard of Boeing, but not everybody has heard of Lockheed Martin. I don't know if it actually pays dividends for them, but Boeing does a ton of advertising to every consumer in the world. And so their brand recognition is through the roof. Lockheed Martin, unless you're in Colorado, obviously we're a little bit more familiar because they're here, but most Americans are like, yeah, cool, they won the government contract. I don't know what that means. It sounds like a no-name brand, but they're not. They're huge, they're massive, but they just haven't created that same caliber of recognition to the average consumer like a Boeing has.
Very interesting. Yeah, this concept of do you need it, and what you stand to gain. Because I look at like Zendesk and MailChimp as 2, and even Drift as like B2B examples where they're playing so well, especially on the Instagram space. But they've clearly, that's why I take it right back to the audience, right? Like they've clearly identified that their target audience is on these channels and appreciates this, quality of authenticity, whereas maybe Lockheed Martin doesn't feel they need it, right? So
yeah. And I wish I had the data to support it, because I would be curious if Boeing actually gets better, bigger, more confident contracts. But I mean, it's hard in the government space, I'm sure. But yeah, it'd be very interesting to have an understanding. And their industry is even more particular. But for B2B businesses that do have kind of, even like an Adobe or Microsoft that has kind of that consumer recognition because they have consumer products, and then they also have this B2B market where they're a little bit better off than maybe a competitor that's exclusively B2B, just because they don't have that same recognition.
Yeah, it feels like the tipping point for when you do play in social heavily should be when you start to do general market advertising, right? Like you think about GE running those ads on prime time to everybody. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you then be on social media, having a really distinct point of view and playing there as well? Because it feels like one necessitates the other, because if people are going to look you up to better understand, well, what does GE do and how does this apply to my life? Because it feels super narrow and niche. Then, that feels like a really natural progression of that marketing strategy. The other one that comes to mind is IBM Watson. I feel like they also are advertising, maybe not right this second during a pandemic, but I feel like they're out there talking about what IBM Watson fuels. So let's be on social. Same thing with Microsoft, right? They had Common, was it, as kind of their guy. So it's like, well, let's go, and around AI and all the cool things that they're doing. With IoT as well. So it just feels like a natural extension of brand.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge missed opportunity as a B2B business. I was on a webinar the other day and they were talking about, the increase in engagement across all social platforms. And what was interesting was at the end of the webinar, the presenter actually was fielding questions from the audience, and 90% of them were asking about how do B2B marketers do this. So clearly there's a lot of discomfort in the B2B space about doing this, but I mean, social is table stakes for B2B companies. Like if you're not investing in it, you're missing a huge opportunity, because this is the movement, this is where it's going. And know that, I mean, and we talk about this with our clients all the time, but like there's no silver bullet. There is nothing that we're going to say, pay for performance. By the way, it's just a bunch of horseshit. it's, you're going to keep iterating and finding what works. And when you start to get some traction here, you invest more there. So it's a matter of, you've got to start testing things now, or you're going to be left in the cold.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, pay-per performance it's basically saying like, we're going to not optimize and not give you the efficiency over time. We'll get a lot smarter and a lot better, and that's where we'll make our margin. We just won't pay it forward.
Forget about sustainability. I don't know. I think Robin ended that one spot on.
All right.
All right, guys. See you next time.